Okay, thanks everyone for being here. This panel is going to be on cyber capacity building, and I think where some of this got started was actually last year at this summit. Well, first let me say, my name's Eric Langford. I work for Birdville Independent School District, and I've been there about a year. I came in to build out their cybersecurity program, and so like I said, last year at the summit, there was a lady named Cindy Donaldson who was here from Global Resilience Federation, and what they do is they help build ISACs. And at the time, I told her, I said, you know, there's no K-12 ISAC, there's nothing that K-12 schools can be involved in and help schools build out their cybersecurity programs or help to educate. And so as we talked and as the year progressed, we worked on that. But the other things that have come out of this is just that, our cyber capacity that we have. And it's in the news. You hear it all the time. We don't have enough people. And so what we're going to talk about today, and what I want to talk about is more on the solution side. How can we solve it, and what are we doing? Because we all know that, you know, we don't have enough people, and there's several different ways we can look at it. There's people that are in the pipeline now that will be coming out that are in college. We need those people. We need the four-year degree people. We need the master's degree people. We need the PhDs. We need all those people, but we also need the younger generations to be involved in cybersecurity, and we need them to understand the importance, and not just people that are just cyber. One of the things that we need to understand is that cyber needs to be built into everything. And one program I want to mention that another state, I spoke with the CIO of the state of North Dakota a couple of weeks ago, and they have a program that they call K through 20W. And what they're doing, and I think this is an excellent program that I would love to see other states and other organizations mimic, is starting in kindergarten all the way through PhD programs, any student in one of their state-run schools will take cyber and computer-related courses every single year. Kindergarten, first grade, all the way through PhD. So that means if you're a master's degree student, a BS student, a PhD student, and say your PhD is in kinesiology, doesn't matter, you're taking a cyber course because it integrates. And along those same lines, an article I read recently in World Economic Forum talked about the fourth industrial revolution, which they consider we're in now. And what that is, that's the merger of technological, physical, and biological systems, meaning that before long, those systems are all going to merge, and they're all going to be one, and so you need to know all these other fields of cyber. So these are some of the things that, you know, I want us to discuss, and I want this to be a very open panel, so please, if you have questions, please reach out. I do want to read one quote to you that I think is interesting, and one that, again, I think we need to think about when it comes to education. I heard this quote from Simon Peyton-Jones. He's a Microsoft researcher, and he actually got it from, I think, Richard Riley. But he says education, and I think about, this is talking about education in general, but I apply this to cyber as well. Education should prepare young people for jobs that do not yet exist, using technologies that have not yet been invented to solve problems of which we are not yet aware. So if you think about that, that's where we are today. And in 1 year's time, things are going to be different than they are now. So with that in mind, I'll introduce Perry, if you want to start and introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Perry Aftab, and I'm an internet privacy and security lawyer. But what's more near and dear to my heart is kids and digital technology, both empowerment and protection. So we just set up a new charity. It's called the Cyber Safety Group. Eric is on our leadership council, and when he and I first started engaging and he talked about his K-12 ISOW, I jumped up and down, and then I said, what's an ISOW? But 2 days later, it was at DHS, and everyone's involved in following him and helping him and lifting a hand and a hammer to make this happen. So my first intent is trying to get as many of you involved as we can, because we're all unpaid volunteers and have no money, and making sure that we're building cyber-aware, cyber-secure, both ecosystems and youth.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Seema Shah. I work at LaGuardia Community College, which is in New York City, in Long Island City. So Long Island City was recently of national, potentially international fame, because Amazon was going to open their second headquarters right in our backyard, which actually presented, I think, potentially naively, tremendous opportunity for our student population. So, everyone might be familiar with colleges and community colleges specifically, but our population, we serve 50,000 students on our campus in Long Island City. The system, which is the City University of New York system, serves over 500,000 students. So one of the largest urban systems of education in our country. But LaGuardia serves a predominantly low-income, minority, underrepresented population of students who are typically the first in their families to study at the college level, or the first in their families to study at the college level in our country. So it's an incredibly ambitious, motivated, talented potential pool of talent that is often overlooked. Frankly, it might be because of the stigma of the last two words in our name, community college, but the reason that I am appreciative of the opportunity to speak on this panel is because we are launching a cybersecurity training program specifically for women and underrepresented populations in New York City's cybersecurity field, where we are funded through the mayor's office, and our mayor is of fame because he tried to run for president, but that's a whole different story. He funded a $100 million initiative, which I'll get into, that talks a lot about making New York City the cyber capital in the United States to rival what's happening in Israel and other parts around the world. And it's a $100 million initiative, but our portion of that pool of funding at LaGuardia is to rapidly accelerate over 150 professionals in the cybersecurity field starting January 2020. So we are imminently about to launch our program, and we're excited to share the details about it with you all today.
Hi everyone. My name is Megan Bridgman, and I'm here with an organization called Perscolis. We're a tech nonprofit. You heard Tony Spinelli speak about it earlier in the Global Peace Panel. And I serve as the managing director here in Dallas, and we offer cost-free tech training to and underemployed individuals, and are located throughout the United States, headquartered in the Bronx. Nice to be here.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Rory Peacock, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director at Education Service Center Region 11 over in Fort Worth. Eric asked me to kind of explain what that is. An Education Service Center in Texas, we have 20 regions across the state, and we kind of sit in between the Texas Education Agency and the school districts themselves. So the Senator was here this morning speaking about legislation and laws that have been passed. We're the ones that filter that through, determine what that looks like for schools, and actually try to help schools implement and get those compliance, but not just compliance, but actually make it mean something when those laws are passed. Region 11 is headquarters out of Fort Worth. We span from the Red River down to Stephenville, which if you're from Texas, you know that from football. But basically the size of my region is roughly the state of the size of Massachusetts. Within that region, we have...
That's one region.
One region. And we're not one of the largest geographical regions. However, size-wise number of students, we've got 77 school districts, ISDs, that we work with, as well as about 50 charter schools. It totals up to just shy of 600,000 students, and we're in one of the fastest growth population areas in the state and the nation right now. So we should top the 600,000 here in about the next year or so. With that being said, it would be wonderful to say that every school has the same needs, the same problems, the same staff and all. I was sharing this morning with Eric, one of our smallest district has 43 kids. They sit just by the Red River. They're a K-8 district. They have no tech staff. So we are the ones that go in and we try to provide the support, provide the resources that they need. Our largest district is Fort Worth ISD with 88,000 students. So for us, 77 schools in between those two sizes, we have the, and the tech side of things, we have the responsibility, the duty, and I guess the hope to try to provide services and solutions for those from the smallest with no staff to Fort Worth ISD, whose staff is probably 5 to 6 times the size of my staff. And so coming up with solutions and resources to help all of those in between often gets a little bit muddy. But just real quick, I wanted to ask, how many in here are part of K-12 education right now? Got a few? I think that's wonderful. What I don't see is, that representation within these types of meetings at this level. And I want to thank you guys first and foremost for having Eric, for having myself, as well as the others that represent K-12 as part of this conversation. Because quite honestly, just like Eric said, it starts with the kids. And I've heard lots of people reference the kids. Well, if we're not part of this conversation, how are we going to truly get to those kids? So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for allowing us to be here today.
Glad you could be here. Megan, let's start with you, and just could you go in a little bit more detail on your program and just tell us how you're helping with the cyber capacity problem, helping companies? And
Sure. So full disclosure, we don't exclusively focus on cyber education. We have a variety of training tracks. But one example is we have a center in Brooklyn. It's sponsored by Barclays. Perscola is powered by Barclays. And they do CNNA training there. And basically, as an organization, we're dedicated to really capturing overlooked talent. And because all of our training tracks are available free of cost, we can really give people an opportunity who might not otherwise have the opportunity to come in and do our training tracks. They're kind of boot camp style. So they go from 9 to 5, typically 12 to 17 weeks. And most recently, we've started customized training tracks, which is really where my work is in Dallas right now, where we partner with corporations directly to address their talent pipeline needs. So as you all know, we're in a very tight job market and apparently in an underemployment crisis, I might say, for cybersecurity. And that's true in other technologies. So not only are we able to meet the corporation where they are in their pipeline needs, but we can also tap into a group of individuals that corporations really haven't done a good job of tapping into. So this includes women, people of color, people who don't have 4-year degrees, anyone who might have been overlooked or not had the opportunity. We do a really good job of capturing that talent, cultivating that talent, and then placing them in our partner companies and employers.
yeah, thank you. And I think Tammy and Tony earlier did a great job of kind of setting this whole discussion up, because that, I think, is one of the issues that I see. And there's this market that you're talking about that is people that maybe want to get into the tech field or whatever, but they don't have the 4-year degrees. They don't have that. And I think that is a huge piece of the cyber capacity building. And I think even on the K-12 side, there's kids that if we start them early enough, when they get into high school, they could be trained and be ready to go, even if they don't want to go to college, as more of what Tony mentioned, the vocational schools, and making that more an important part of their education. Seema, can you tell us a little bit more about your program as well? I know you're kind of doing this similar to Megan,
yeah,
with the older students. And
yeah. So there's actually no age restriction at all on our programming. So it's anyone in New York City, and if you have, young people or folks that are looking to transition into cybersecurity, please send them to LaGuardia Community College, because our program is not only free, but they will never be asked to pay their tuition back. So this is not an income share. This is nothing like that. We work very hard, and I keep looking in this direction because my colleague Chandana, who actually wrote the grant that we got from the mayor's office, is here as well, and she'll be speaking a little bit later. But yeah, thank you for that. But the one thing I'll say, our program is different because we focus not only on the training. And actually, frankly, we realize that what our expertise in is meeting the needs of the student aside from their educational journey. So what we focus on at LaGuardia, through a partnership that we was seen as best in class by the federal government, and then the city asked us to kind of replicate this at the local level, is we actually partner with a private sector boot camp provider that has the technical expertise, at least at this point in time, to build out a cybersecurity curriculum. So in New York City, we're partnering with a provider called Full Stack Academy. So then the question is, what does LaGuardia bring to the table? What we bring to the table is all of the support services that students that come from non-traditional backgrounds need. So what do you think, just as like kind of a show of hands, what do you think is one of the top reasons in New York City that students aren't able to go to college or to complete their degree over the course of 2 years, 4 years? Sir?
Probably having to support their families.
Yes, so not only the family support, yes, sir.
SES, socioeconomic status?
So it's actually more simple than that. It's that they don't have a Metro card to get on the train every day. It's over, so a Metro card for a month in New York City is roughly $130. And so they don't have the cash support to float a month's worth or a year's worth of a Metro card at a time. You have to buy the Metro card in advance before your ride. And that's actually one of the top reasons that our students don't finish and don't have the ability, not the interest, don't have the physical ability to get to campus and to participate in programming. So what LaGuardia does is we actually offer our support, a full, what we call wraparound support services to our students. We offer childcare. And again, this is for not only our students enrolled in our full-time credit programs, this is actually for open to students that are in our workforce program. And our cybersecurity program is considered a workforce program. So you just come to campus to learn something and then transition into industry. You walk away with 5 certifications as well, including the CISSP. But going back, so what LaGuardia provides is a number of the wraparound support services, case management, MetroCard, childcare, access to our career center, access to folks that are constantly in touch with our students to not only check on their technical ability, but to make sure that their mental ability and mental stamina to finish a draining boot camp-like program is there and is constantly there. So we have a hyper focus and hyper expertise on meeting the holistic students' needs, the students' holistic needs.
And do you help in placement after they?
Yes, we do. We have 70 companies in New York City that signed on because they knew about LaGuardia's expertise at the national level. So we actually also run a program with General Assembly, which is another boot camp provider, Udacity, which is an online-only provider, and Software Guild, which is actually an Ohio-based provider. Because we have that expertise in software development, the city asked us to expand our programs and services to cybersecurity training. And when we launched our cybersecurity training, 70 partners came to us and said, we want to think through helping you with curriculum and helping you with internships. Placement is always really, really tricky, and I'm sure, Megan, you have lots of thoughts on this as well, because, and we were talking about this yesterday with this gentleman, over dessert, but one of the things that we have a hard time getting a company to do, and I think it's the risk factor associated with non-traditional students, is giving our student the offer letter.
Well, I think it's that, and I think it's what Tammy alluded to, is that mindset change. People need to change. We have to change the way that we think about people coming into the cyber role. They don't necessarily have to have that traditional student. We can have people, there's right here, Jeremy, he probably knows more than most people that have been in the world for, he's 16? He probably knows more than people that have been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, but yet, companies may be hesitant to hire him, but
right.
that's the kind of thing. I think that piece, what Tammy talked about as well, we have to change that mindset in the corporate world to understand that we need these people, and it doesn't matter.
I don't actually think it's a mindset as much as it's like, I think it's actually, what Tammy said around behavior, right? So it's like corporate cultures tend to replicate themselves, right? And when I was looking, when I was hiring a team, I went to my network, and I went to an Ivy League institution, and I went to that network to look for people to join my team. It's just, and I'm owning up to that, and that's just, I think, traditionally what people do when they're thinking about expansion and growth and, hiring and things like that.
So they have to reach out more, what you're saying. They need to get outside their normal groups to
yeah, and it's hard. Mm-hmm. So we're, my role specifically at LaGuardia is to be like the front door.
Yeah.
Like there's no guesswork. There's 50,000 students here. Call me, one email address, one phone number. I'll get you connected to our population.
And then Perry, I'll ask you on I guess more on the younger kids side, K-12 side, where do you see that we need to start getting these kids involved with cyber, and so that we can move them in the right path and direct them the right way?
Well, we were talking about jargonism and gibberish and the rest of it. And I'm a lawyer. I'll never recover from being a lawyer. They just do surgery and take out a piece of your brain, and they can't put it back, so you're there forever. Your sense of humor is usually the first thing you lose. But we need to recognize that we set up silos. So we have digital privacy over here, and we have cybersecurity over here, and I reside in the middle. And I call that digital risk management, which we've talked about. I call it cyber safety. It's the human side of digital. And I did a podcast, a very, very well-known podcaster, and there were two people involved, and they asked me if I would do something. And would I talk about cyber stalking of women in particular, but cyber stalking of adults? So I said, okay. And one of the podcasters said, Perry, thanks for being here, but I'm not really sure why we're putting you on our cybersecurity podcast, which made me feel very good. And he said, I don't understand it. And the other one said, because I run cybersecurity for a massive corporation that has employees who are being stalked all the time. And we can't forget about the human piece. So we have to start seeing it across the board. You're not a cybersecurity person and just do code. You're not a privacy person and just do policy. We all have to do it all, and you have certain skills. So we have to start early. Our Cyber Safety Agents program starts at 5. And the kids want to help make everybody safer and more secure in their household. They don't distinguish cybersecurity and cyber safety and privacy. It's just doing what they do online and not getting hurt in the process. So they all want to be secret agents. I keep trying to get secret out of the cyber safety agents, but they're 5, so I'm probably going to lose that argument. And they want to protect their friends and their family and their classmates. So they want me to start with teaching them about digital hygiene, so passwords, malware, security of the routers, which sites are okay, which sites aren't okay, the kind of things that they can yell at mom over because she's not doing it right. And that program works. I had a current FTC commissioner, Pam Harbour, who's no longer an FTC commissioner, but she came to me and she said she wanted her kids in one of my programs. This was years ago. And they were too young for my teen programs. So we created our tween programs. And her kids were there, and I was hand training them because when an FTC commissioner wants her kids in your programs, you hand train them, and you go to her. And I said to them, okay, now I want you to Google yourselves and see what information's out there that you might not want. And there was a map to Pam's house. So they Googled themselves, and here's Pam Harbour, new FTC commissioner, and here's a map to her house, and this is where she shops. And the kids were appalled. So they fixed their mother's internet access, and it was a lot better. So start really young. Make it relevant. Tell them how it applies to them. We have programs that start at 13 to 18, our Teen Angels program, who speak at the United Nations, and one of them sits on MTV's Public Affairs Board with me. And when I was still on Facebook Safety Advisory Board years ago, one of them advised Facebook, and they used to advise Google. Now they're not allowed to talk to either of them. But they need to get involved early. We talked about the World Economic Forum. I've got a 10-year-old who's doing the closing keynote with me Thursday for a World Economic Forum event. And so we need to make sure that they're included and that they tell us what's going on as much as we tell them, because they understand stuff we don't. So you got to start young. We need to understand that the loose lips sink ships thing from the 40s that none of you would remember. I wasn't even born in the 40s, thank goodness. Applies in schools. So when I was talking to the Texas representative, he said that the second most important thing in his polling, first is border security, is schools, shootings, school violence. Everybody's worried about it. So what's anyone doing about it? The kids know what's going on ahead of time.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting, so most schools seem to understand physical risk, and Rory, you can probably speak to this too. They understand physical risk, but for some reason they have a difficult time translating that to the cyber risk or organizational risk as a whole. And I don't know, Rory, is that something you want to talk about? I know that you probably deal with that all the time.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So we've heard, building capacity within the kids, within, the college-age kids, the workforce, and going through there. One of the things that we do, and one of the things that I do, is I try to focus building capacity within the organizations themselves, the school districts. And 3 years ago, probably it was, we experienced, well, no, I know for a fact it was 4 years ago because I just started this role. I've been there just over 4 years now, but 6 months in, our organization was hit with a massive ransomware attack that we were not prepared for. Now, I'm going to poll you guys. How many of you have been hit with a serious security cyber attack? Okay? So we've got a few of you that actually acknowledged it. How many of you would actually like, if you've been hit, to sit up here on a panel and talk about it? A few less, but good. Because when we were hit, I had people 6 months into a job, the day that we were meeting with a company to talk about our posture, to go through and figure out where we sit. We host lots and lots of information for lots of districts across the state. We're the largest school website host provider in the nation. We're the largest library and inventory resource host for schools in the nation, okay? And all of those library systems went down and all the librarians started calling. And that's not a good thing when librarians start calling you because the kids can't get books. And I had lots of people calling for my job right after I just started the position. And I had a couple of choices. Okay, either, yep, let's hide, let's try to cover up as much as we can and not be transparent. Or, because I live in the world of education, let's educate people. Let's build capacity. And that happened in February. We had our first cybersecurity summit in May. And my team set up on the stage during lunch and answered every single question that came at us from the school districts we served. And my guys were nervous. I was nervous. But at the end of the day, when we walked out of there and we got the feedback and the survey results, the panel had the highest rating of, we need more of this. Thank you. We appreciate your transparency. 6 months later, we were down in Region 1, which is down in the valley, down near Brownsville, and they asked us to come to theirs and do the same panel for them, and we shared there. And there's nothing more vulnerable than sitting on stage saying, yes, we got attacked. Yes, we were open. Yes, this happened. Yes, we had to pay for part of the ransomware because we didn't have the proper backups. And I will say on a side note, their customer service was phenomenal when we had to pay for it. Top notch, we learned. I actually used that and say, all right, guys, this is how we're going to treat people. They did good. But by doing that, we've built capacity. And people have started coming in and saying, hey, we know you've been there. We're now there. And I have lots of districts that call and say, I really don't want this out, but can you help us? And we do, whether it's public or discreet. And so by really working together, and I love the fact that, this was titled Capacity Building, we have to work together and we have to help each other. And I am not the expert in cybersecurity. I know that. But one thing I do, and I do very well, is I can bring schools together. I can bring those people together that need this help. And I can bring those small schools with those big schools, and we now have a coalition of large schools that are going to go out if and when one of the small schools is hit and help those people. So we're building capacity. Eric's on a small committee that we put together at Birdville, and he's one of the kind of the leaders in this. And again, I appreciate being up here with Eric today. But we're working to see how do we continue building that capacity at a higher level and working together so that we all get better. We're not all going to be protected, but we can all work together to mitigate and get back on our feet and help each other the best we can.
And I think that along, the sharing between organizations, between different types of things is important. And Perry, going back to what you talked about with, starting early and and kids wanting to be involved and partake. You know, one of the best analogies I've ever heard that I like to share was from a guy named Tony Sager, who was with the NSA, and he created the CIS controls back when he was still with the NSA. But he uses the analogy of washing your hands. You know, we all wash our hands just because we know that it's going to stop the spread of germs and stop the spread of disease. But it's not something that necessarily you know, somebody has to specifically tell us what to do. Yeah, we're taught when we're young to do that, and I think it's the same with cyber issues. We start young and start teaching kids, hey, this is what you need to think about. This is what you need to do as you move forward. And I think with cyber capacity building, we've got those pieces. We've got to build those kids, but at the same time, I think there's all the workforce people out there that you serve and that you serve that are important. And so going back to that side of things, what are the results that you're seeing in your program as far as you know, people that are coming to that and going through the program, and what are your placement levels, and how are people responding, I guess, to being trained in what they would be considered a new career?
Yeah, the results are outstanding. We have an 80% placement rate at Perscolis, and we're committed to that as an organization across all of our sites. We track that data well. Our retention rate is also high, around 75 or 80%. We track up to 2 years. And our graduation rate is 95%. So I think, you know, we see tech breaking down barriers everywhere with sharing economies, et cetera. And I think this is such an exciting era because with tech and skills-based training, there's this barrier that's starting to melt away and open doors to include a better representation of who we are and where we're going, and our students embody that. So I think the appetite and the hunger for that knowledge and to be on this very successful career trajectory is so powerful, and the results speak to that.
And do you see the same type of results in your program as well?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I'll say, so, you know, like our college president just resigned, but she said the #1 innovation in higher education is the community college. And that's because everyone is accepted. 100% of the applicants that want to go to LaGuardia are allowed admission to LaGuardia. So what does that mean in terms of our student population? That means that we serve the most disadvantaged of the most disadvantaged in New York City. That means we serve folks that have little to no English comprehension and reading and writing comprehension. And they've been, for whatever reason, passed along, or they're new to the country and English is not their first language. You know, they have no social capital. And, you know, even today at lunch, I saw 2 folks exchange business cards about a potential job opportunity. That never is part of our students' experiences as they are thinking about entering into the workforce. They have no connection, no social capital, no network, and everything that we do, and again, the reason that LaGuardia is involved in the cybersecurity training program is because we are trying to manufacture for them incredibly quickly and at no cost to them. So they don't have to pay $5 or $10 to go to a meetup. You know, they don't have to go outside of their comfort zones, especially if they live in a certain neighborhood and they don't travel. There's a thing around New York that you don't typically leave your geography and your borough. And so we try to do that very quickly, efficiently, and as impact, you know, with as much impact as we can generate. And our student population, we don't cream them. There is no way that there's no kind of strict admissions or anything like that. So when you think about that type of population, and despite everything, taking care of multiple generations of family members, children, parents, siblings, you know, multiple life responsibilities, competing life responsibilities, on top of everything else they're doing in their life, they're choosing to come to our campus. And I think like that, by definition alone, represents, again, to borrow words spoken earlier, a resilience that is very hard to come by. So when we talk about millennials, I like now kind of, you know, get a little like angry inside because our students fall within the typical kind of millennial age markers, but they are anything but. And if you, and I, you know, in a lot of ways are anything but, right? So that sense of entitlement, that sense of like, needing validation and things like that, that's not our students. And that's not the kind of attitude and approach that they bring to their learning journeys and their learning experiences. So, and New York City is a really competitive talent market, right? So let's not forget that fun fact about New York. So, our students struggle to find jobs because, and even in cybersecurity, we're hopeful that it's not the case because of this, what we're talking about. But in terms of the employment, but in other fields, there's 100. Within our system, there's 25 college campuses within the city university system, but then there's NYU and Columbia and Pace and hundreds of other programs, public and private, that are spitting out graduates of technical training and software development, cybersecurity training. And so we're trying to make LaGuardia's programs stand out because of our deep commitment to our student population and all of the support services, including social capital building programs that we provide that no other provider thinks about or focuses on to the extent that we do in our market. So we're excited about that.
So I think, so this is just a little bit of organizations up here that are working on this whole issue of cyber capacity. There's two people I want to point out in the audience that you should go and talk. One is Mary Cheney. She's got an organization that she's working on to do the thing, and the other is Mike Saylor. Is he here, Mike? I don't see him, but he also is doing a lot in this area. So if either of them are good to talk to. The other thing I just want to end on is just so there's a guy here in Dallas, and his name was actually let me find what it is. Zach Hughes. He's a former Green Beret, and he had 4 points, and it was around education and not necessarily a cyber rater, but I thought they were great and should apply to this. And so one is, humans gain wisdom through experience. Be a mentor. So all of us in here, everybody that's in these fields needs to go out and mentor somebody. Pick somebody, pick an organization, one of these organizations. Just be a mentor and help break down those barriers. The other is use technology. It says evolve, because they already have, and he's talking specifically about the younger generation. We can't expect them to not use technology. Technology is moving fast, and we need to evolve right along with that. The other is lead each child uniquely. Now, this can not only go to child, but every person uniquely. And he says, rules that apply to, don't create standards or rules that apply to everyone. And he says in his specific world, I wouldn't lead an 18-year-old U.S. Army infantryman the same way I would a 15-year-old militia fighter. And basically what that means is there's so many different people that are available to build this capacity, but we can't treat them the same. We have to look at them all differently and say, how can you fit into this system, and how can we help you get to where you need to be? And then the last is kind of what I think Tammy hit on too. Hold them accountable. They want to be held accountable by a leader. If you give them a task, ensure it's being done and being done well. So I think that's good for all of us. Let's make sure we're all doing our task well and educating people and trying to build this capacity.